Zadandani, Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the new spin-off, My Hero Academia Team Up Missions. And honestly, this is honestly one of the best spin-offs so far. I wouldn't say that it's the best of all of them. I mean, Vigilantes is hard to beat, but it's honestly really good is the important thing to note here. The important thing to realize before we actually get into this is the placement. If you are planning to get team up missions, I suggest that you at least read through the villain arc. I'd I I'd like to say that this takes place between either during the villain arc or between the villain arc and when Midoriya and Kachan go to Endeavor's agency. Because of the fact that, one, Deku never uses Black Whip in this, and two, well, uh, Deku does actually have other abilities, but also Bakugo does have his license. So this is after he gets his license, but Deku is still not using Black Whip to its full, to any extent really. Which, keep in mind, Deku didn't really use Black Whip at all until finally he gained better understanding of it during the Endeavor Agency arc. And basically, he started using it like crazy after that. So, yeah, he's he's at least learned how to use it by this point. So that's the important thing to realize. But what exactly is Team Up Missions? Well, first off, it is written by Yoko Akiyama, who apparently has made a series called Sagari-chan Tana. Yeah, it's Sagari-chan. Sagari's Expedition Team is what it's called, apparently. Which is not here in America, sadly. I would have actually liked to have read that because this is actually a really interesting story, and if they ever were to make that, I think that it into a manga over here in America, then I think I would probably get that. But yeah. So basically, what is the story of this? Well, the simple fact of the matter is that people basically the entire country is worried about the fact that there's really no symbol of peace anymore. So people are going to need to start teaming up as heroes for a while until things are back under control. That is the basic idea behind everything. And so the Hero Society is trying to get all of them together to actually start this up. And All Might is freaks out at first, thinking, "Oh no, one of these didn't actually go through. This, that, and the other thing. Oh no!" But it's not a big deal. It's honestly, it's kind of hilarious. But the first actual team up mission is that of Deku, Ochako, and Bakugo going to team up with frickin' Mirko. And we actually get to learn a little bit more about how she works as a hero. Basically, all that we've seen so far of her is in the war arc, where she did a lot of crazy things. Holy crap. She was awesome in that. Super badass. But we've also seen her in Vigilantes with her fighting and saving the day like crazy. And getting to do some really cool stuff. But that was when she was still in school, so barely even has her hero. Probably doesn't even have her provisional hero license. I don't know if she does, but it's actually kind of interesting to say the least that she and Bakugo are actually very similar, and I think that's really interesting to say the least. I think that is honestly a bit of a weird situation to say the least, but I don't know. It's complicated, and I don't want to get into all of that right now. But basically, Mirko and Bakugo and Uraraka go on a few missions, helping out just random people around the town, Basically, Uraraka saves a little boy's balloon. Bakugo wants to take down villains, and Deku does nothing except for bump into someone who really wants to use their quirk. And because it's extremely dangerous for them to not be using it. But yeah. And that person is important because then they have to fight them. And it's actually a really interesting thing, to say the least, because it actually helps us to understand that Deku is one of those people who, if he can avoid fighting, he will. A lot of the past moments in the series, Deku has just launched himself into a fight. But in this moment, Deku is realizing that this person is not doing it out of malicious intent. He is only trying, he cannot control this quirk any longer. If he doesn't release it, he will die himself. And it's because of Deku that they are actually able to save him. And I think that it's actually really important because we can also see that Bakugo is starting to actually respect Deku in his own way. Obviously, he still hates Deku to an extreme degree, but that is the importance of these chapters, is that Deku is learning, and so are many of these other characters. They're learning to be more themselves, to work together. And honestly, I am loving that Bakugo is becoming better and better of a person. And even though he does hate people a lot, he is actually starting to feel like he could actually become friends with these people. And obviously, in the recent chapters of Normal My Hero Academia, this has actually become more and more obvious as he cares so much for Deku that he is running to his hospital room because he's worried about him. That is the true mark of friendship. A friendship that was broken is starting to be repaired, and that is honestly amazing. And yeah, I will briefly mention the other two. Bakugo and Midoriya team up with Hawks to stop a villain. So that's another thing that I do want to briefly mention. Because of this specific moment, I'm actually willing to say that Hawks has not yet joined the League of Villains yet. So I don't think that Genis has actually gone missing yet. Genis has not been killed yet. So yeah, that's interesting to say the least. So it's hard to say for sure, but I think that that's an important thing to realize, is that this is before the whole Genis situation, as far as I'm aware. But after that, the last group, well, I guess there's still one more before we actually go into that whole situation. But if this is canon, we have to now consider the second movie 100% is canon. That's right. Team Up Missions takes content, takes characters from the second movie and says, with 100% certainty, this is canon. And that is awesome. I am so glad that we get to see this. Basically, Melissa comes back and is interacting with our heroes and teams up with Hatsume to make Deku some better gear and equip him with better stuff. Obviously, they don't do too much, basically just repairing his outfit, but they do have a little brief moment where they work together, and it's honestly awesome, and I really want to see them work together more, especially in the anime. But yeah. Later down the line, we also get a really awesome story about Melissa and in her childhood, and honestly, I really want to talk about that more, but we'll talk about that once we actually get to it. The next chapter is actually considered a one-shot for some reason. Basically, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Ida, and Sun Eater work with Fat Gum to find a little girl's Prince Charming, basically the guy that this little girl has fallen in love with after she was attacked by a lot of villains. And she's in love with Fat Gum's Slim Self, which I find absolutely hilarious. We've all seen in multiple instances where he's basically, after taking a whole bunch of damage, Fat Gum is really slim, he's very muscular, and he's just like the most bizarre thing ever. And it's honestly hilarious, to say the least. Oh my gosh. I love the moment, but it is absolutely hilarious that someone falls in love with just the look of that form, and it makes just so much sense, and it's actually insane how much it makes sense. Oh, but yep, that happened. But they basically go around to the different agencies around the town, meeting up with other classmates, people realizing what the heck is going on. We get to see a really awesome moment between Monoma and Bakugo. But I don't know, that was honestly really weird. It was hilarious, to say the least. I don't know. I can't really go over all of it right now. But yeah. And the next one, before, which is the last one before the Melissa stuff, we get a nice little moment about basically everyone working together to find this little kid's soccer ball. And it's honestly just such a sweet little moment because we get to see a kid who's starting to fall in love, who's starting to like heroes and all of this stuff. And this is basically his introduction to the world of heroes by meeting a huge cast of characters, all of the class of 1A, and he's just like, these people are weird. And then as that stuff goes on, he starts to realize, oh my gosh, these kids are actually really cool. And we also get to see a little moment of Uraraka crushing on Deku. So there's that. They fight off against a villain. No big deal. That one was pretty self-explanatory. Team Up Mission so far is basically just a whole bunch of really fun moments of the different characters working together and how they would work together. And I think that's honestly a fantastic way to tell this story. It's a spin-off. It's one of the things that I've kind of loved about School Briefs and now this is that they get to go into details that Horikoshi doesn't really get to go into. Horikoshi's main goal with My Hero Academia is to tell the story of Deku and Shigaraki, their fight, and how that plays into things. Obviously, he breaks into other moments and stuff like that, but the primary thing that they've been able to show with this is the fact that these characters are able to work together, and we're able to see that little piece of their life that we don't get to see normally. It's, like I said, I love School Briefs because of that reason. And this literally is School Briefs, but in a manga form, and it's different stories. And that's why I love this. These two things are honestly amazing. But let's actually talk about Melissa. Oh boy. So we get to see briefly a lot of interesting moments where Melissa is starting to wonder what exactly she can do. She's starting to wonder if she can ever be a hero since she doesn't have a quirk. And she starts to wonder why her dad never went into being a hero. But she starts to realize that you can be a hero by doing other methods. It's one of the biggest things as to what Deku learns in Two Heroes, that these people can still be heroes even if they aren't necessarily actually able to use their quirks. But it's in other methods that they can continue to do stuff. Being a cop, being a fireman, being any of these just random tasks that random people can have, regular people who aren't allowed to use their quirks, or if they are allowed to use their quirks, it's in special ways to help people besides the methods that obviously everyone wants to go into. There are other options. And I think that is a really powerful message. But something I want to bring up is actually the first moments in this chapter where we get to see Melissa and her dad in a hospital. And finding out that she's gonna be quirkless. Huh. 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 I'm sorry, I have to say that again and again. Basically, for those of you who are unaware, I've had this little theory going on in my head for a little while now that basically anyone that you see as quirkless, yeah, they're not quirkless. They're really not. Basically, unless you're talking about someone who's in an older generation, basically no one is quirkless. Basically, anyone that's younger than All Might, I would say at that point, the majority of people, maybe about 99.999 repeating percent of the population has a quirk. It's extremely rare. Basically, the whole 80% of the population has a quirk. A lot of people assume, oh, that must mean that there's a lot of people just around the world who don't have quirks. But the majority, I'd say that 20% that doesn't have a quirk, that is actually freaking older people. People who have never had the chance to get a quirk. And that's it, basically. Basically, everyone who doesn't have a quirk are just people from older generations. And the fact that 80% of people have quirks, that actually makes a lot of sense, especially for younger people, to not... that if younger people are getting quirks, yeah, I think that 20% of people, that the ones that are in the childhood areas, all of them, every single one of them was not born quirkless, but instead their quirks were stolen. Every single one of them was everyone thought, oh, they're late bloomers or all of this jazz, but in actuality, All For One has been going around for years and years, stealing people's quirks at birth, and basically just stealing all of these quirks in order to make sure that he has the most powerful quirks there are. And he's basically sending his goons out to basically find people whose parents have kind of interesting quirks, and their quirk combinations would be extremely powerful. Obviously avoiding the big ones that are becoming these heroes, because if they try to steal a quirk from someone who is a hero, well, there's going to be some big problems, and they're going to have to deal with that. They take them from regular civilians, people who wouldn't realize it. They would just think, oh, okay, that explanation makes sense. But in actuality, it's not true. I kind of got this feeling at first when we first met the Doctor. Something just felt off about his explanation. And many people have actually talked about this, that his explanation makes no sense. What does the toe thing have to do with anything? I believe, and I think a lot of other people are starting to realize, that is a bullshit explanation. There's a whole bunch of these that they just have them on hand. These explanations make no sense if you actually sit down and think about it. But to someone who's upset and are looking for an answer, this gives them an answer, even though it doesn't make any sense. So they assume, oh, that must be real. And when we finally found out who the Doctor was, oh boy, we finally knew 100% Deku was not born quirkless. Which, because of that factor, that Deku 100% was not born quirkless, and with now even more information in the main manga actually pretty much saying 100% that is the case, he was not born quirkless, that leads me to 100% believe that Deku, as well as everyone else in his generation, including Melissa, was not born quirkless, but instead their quirks were just that little bit of interesting that All For One chose, I'm gonna take that, thank you, and then walk away. I know that's a bit of a crazy statement to make, but honestly, I think it's the right one. I don't know. There's a lot to it, and I don't really have time to go over every single one, but honestly, I love these theories, and I'm really excited to see how things are going to be going forward in the rest of Team Up missions. The fact remains that we don't know what else they're going to be doing for the rest of these. Obviously, they could continue to do the story that they've already been doing, but the fact remains that this is really a short amount of time. Like, this is literally right before Midoriya and the rest start to go off to train with Endeavor. So they can't really do this stuff while they're training with Endeavor. Instead, we're going to have to focus on people who are not in agencies and stuff like that. So, maybe this little thing at the end where, wanting Saguri-chan to have the spotlight. That makes sense. Just a little theory to keep your minds busy, and to look forward to seeing what is left for the rest of the series. Before we actually finish off, I would briefly like to mention that also in this we get a really cool few chapters of My Hero Academia, which basically, for those of you who are unaware of what those are, they are basically the short stories written by somebody else who I'm forgetting at the moment. But basically, they're about the girls in My Hero Academia, and this one specifically is talking about Itsuki Bakugo, who is Bakugo's mother. So, yeah, lots of fun stuff, and we will absolutely be talking more about this amazing series going into the future. But anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and ring that notification bell. And of course, even if you haven't subscribed yet, please if you haven't subscribed and you are even if you're not new, please subscribe and ring the notification bell, because it really does help us out a ton. And of course, if you do want to support the channel even more, then definitely head down to the description, checking out all of our links down there, including our other channels, our social medias, and ways you can support us financially, including our Patreon, our merch store, and many others. And of course, if you have any thoughts or theories, please make sure to leave them down in the comments below. But anyways, guys, I have been Electro Ninja, and I will see you guys next time. But on!